what art is and how we experience it. We're discussing sections from The Live Creature, an essay from John Dewey's seminal work, Art as Experience. Rachel, Dewey starts with a rather provocative idea that the very existence of artworks, particularly those we deem classics, has become an obstacle to understanding art. Can you unpack that for us?
It's a crucial starting point for Dewey. He argues that we often confuse the physical object, the painting, the statue, the building, with the actual work of art. We see these finished products as existing apart from human experience. This isolation, especially for works that have attained classic status, creates a kind of reverence that actually prevents fresh insight.
So instead of helping us understand these masterpieces by their very perfection and prestige, build a wall around themselves, they become almost opaque in their significance?
Precisely. Dewey says that when artistic objects are separated from both their conditions of origin and their operation in experience, they're relegated to a separate realm. This cuts them off from the materials and aims of all other human effort. He proposes that a primary task for anyone writing about the philosophy of fine arts is to restore continuity between these refined and intensified forms of experience that are artworks and the everyday events that make up our universal experience.
He uses a powerful analogy here, saying mountain peaks do not float unsupported. They do not even just rest upon the earth. They are the earth in one of its manifest operations. This suggests art is not some ethereal thing, but deeply grounded. But then he says something truly counterintuitive, that to understand art, we might have to, quote, forget them for a time and turn to ordinary experiences. That sounds like a detour, not a direct path.
It is a detour and an essential one for Dewey. He believes theory isn't about exclamations of admiration or emotional outbursts, but about understanding and insight. Think about understanding a flower. You can enjoy its beauty without knowing anything theoretically about plants. But to understand its flowering, you have to know about the interaction of soil, air, water, and sunlight that conditions its growth.
So the Parthenon, by common consent, a great work of art, only has aesthetic standing as it becomes an experience for a human being. And to understand it theoretically, we have to look beyond the building itself to the needs and experiences of the Athenian citizens who built it not as a work of art, but as a civic commemoration.
Exactly. He argues that understanding art requires finding its germs and roots in everyday experiences we don't usually consider aesthetic. We need to see how the tense grace of the ball player infects the onlooking crowd or the delight of the housewife in tending her plants. These ordinary moments, like the man poking the fire to make it burn better, are full of fascination and engagement that is fundamentally aesthetic.
It implies that an intelligent mechanic taking pride in his handiwork is artistically engaged. This challenges the idea that art is confined to galleries or museums or to fine art. But if art and aesthetic quality are implicit in every normal experience, why do they so often fail to become explicit? Why does art seem like an importation into experience from a foreign country?
That's the core problem Dewey sets out to answer. He says we can't answer it unless we first have a clear idea of what a normal experience is. He grounds this in the essential conditions of life itself. The live creature, whether human or animal, exists in constant interaction with its environment. Life is a process where an organism falls out of step with its surroundings and then recovers unison through effort or chance. This recovery is never just a return, it's an enrichment.
So these biological commonplaces, the constant adjustment and readaptation to an environment, are more than just biology. They are the roots of the aesthetic in experience. That's a profound connection. It suggests that the very act of living, of surviving and thriving, is inherently aesthetic.
Indeed. Dewey argues that if life continues and expands, it's through overcoming opposition and transforming conflict into differentiated aspects of a higher-powered and more significant life. This adaptation isn't passive accommodation, it's an active expansion. Here he says, in germ are balance and harmony attained through rhythm. Equilibrium comes from tension, not inertness. Form arises when a stable, moving equilibrium is reached.
It's a dynamic order, not an imposed one. He suggests that whenever a living creature attains sensibility, it, quote, welcomes order with a response of harmonious feeling when it finds congruous order around it. So order itself becomes admirable because it allows life to continue in a world constantly threatened with disorder.
Exactly. He describes moments where an organism, after disruption and conflict, shares in the ordered relations of its environment as bearing within itself the germs of a consummation akin to the aesthetic. The rhythm of losing and recovering union persists in man and becomes conscious. Emotion signals a break. Discord prompts reflection, and the desire for restoration converts emotion into interest. The artist, in a peculiar way, cares for this phase where union is achieved. They cultivate moments of resistance and tension, not for their own sake, but for their potential to bring forth a unified and total experience.
He contrasts this with the scientific person who's interested in problems to be solved, moving on to the next one once a solution is found. But he's careful not to separate them entirely, stating the ultimate matter of both, emphases and experience, is the same. The difference, he says, is in tempo and emphasis. The artist's thought is more immediately embodied in the object, while the scientist uses symbols.
Yes, the artist thinks in the very qualitative media they work in. Dewey challenges the odd notion that an artist does not think and a scientific inquirer does nothing else. Our direct experience, he explains, comes from nature and man interacting. This interaction is full of rhythmic beats of want and fulfillment, struggle and achievement, bringing about stability and order in change. He says there are two sorts of possible worlds where aesthetic experience would not occur, one of mere flux and one that is completely finished. Our world, with its combination of movement and culmination, of breaks and reunions, is precisely what makes aesthetic quality possible.
So the moment of passage from disturbance into harmony is described as that of intensest life. This kind of happiness isn't just pleasure, it's a fulfillment that reaches to the depths of our being, an adjustment of our whole being with the conditions of existence. An alive creature doesn't just live in the present, it adopts its past and sees the future as a promise, embracing hushed reverberations, as George Santayana put it. He highlights a quote from George Eliot in The Mill on the Floss, where she says, quote, "Our delight in the sunshine on the deep-bladed grass today might be no more than the faint perception of wearied souls, if it were not for the sunshine and grass of far-off years, which still live in us and transform our perception into love." End quote. This beautifully illustrates how our past experiences enrich and deepen our present aesthetic appreciation. He suggests looking to animal life, to the fox, the dog, and the thrush as reminders of a unity of experience, which we so fractionalize when work is labor and thought withdraws us from the world. The live animal is fully present, its senses always on the qui-vive. This unity is mirrored in the savage, who is most observant of the world about him and most taut with energy, seeing observation as action in preparation.
He concludes this section by stating that connecting art and aesthetic perception with experience doesn't lower their significance. Instead, experience, in the degree in which it is experience, is heightened vitality. It's about active and alert commerce with the world. A, quote, complete interpenetration of self in the world of objects and events, unquote. This stability isn't stagnation, it's rhythmic and developing. And because experience is the fulfillment of an organism in its struggles and achievements in a world of things, it is art and germ.
So, art, in its fundamental sense, is a culmination of life itself, a heightened form of our engagement with the world. But if this is the case, why has art become so isolated? What historical forces contributed to our current compartmentalized view of fine art? Dewey points to several powerful influences. Historically, the forces that removed religion from common life also affected fine art. He cites the rise of museums and galleries as memorials of nationalism and imperialism, often filled with loot gathered by its monarchs. He also implicates capitalism, where the nouveau riche collected rare, costly art as a sign of good standing in the realm of higher culture, much like stocks and bonds signify economic standing. These institutions effectively segregated art from common life.
So art became a status symbol, a demonstration of superior cultural status rather than an integral part of community life. This leads to what he calls economic cosmopolitanism, where works lose their indigenous status and become mere specimens of fine art. And artists, pushed to the side by mechanized industry, sometimes exaggerate their separateness to the point of eccentricity and an attempt at self-expression. All these forces together create a chasm between ordinary and aesthetic experience. Philosophies of art then arise that locate it in a separate contemplative realm. Dewey's purpose is not to offer an economic interpretation, but to show that theories isolating art arise from specifiable, extraneous conditions, not from art's inherent nature. These conditions, embedded in institutions and habits, operate unconsciously, making us assume they are in the nature of things.
His goal, then, is to recover the continuity of aesthetic experience with the normal processes of living. It's about going back to the common run of things to discover the aesthetic qualities such experience possesses. This seems like a radical reevaluation of how we approach and understand art.
It absolutely is. He believes that a crude experience, if authentically an experience, is more fit to give a clue to the intrinsic nature of aesthetic experience than an object already set apart. By following this clue, we can see how art develops and accentuates what's valuable in everyday enjoyment, much like dyes come out of coal tar products when they receive special treatment. He's offering a new mode of approach that starts from art's connection to the discovered qualities of ordinary experience.
This perspective truly reframes the entire discussion, moving art from a distant pedestal into the very fabric of our lives. It's a powerful argument for understanding art not as a luxury, but as essential to a full and vibrant existence. If you found this conversation insightful, share it with someone who appreciates challenging conventional ideas about art.